Say hello to the latest addition to my Macintosh collection. This is a Macintosh LC3, the third member of the Macintosh LC family. We live in an instant gratification society, and so it is that there's a lot of folks that get on my case about talking about the history of these machines and what made them what they are, and they want me to just power it in, power it up, plug it in, power it on, whatever. So fine. There's a timestamp on your screen. You can skip to that, which is where I talk about this machine briefly, and we attempt to get it to work. For those of you that actually care about history and don't want to repeat it, we will discuss this machine. Now, the LC3 was introduced in 1993 as a replacement for the LC2. But we gotta go back a little bit further than that. The Macintosh LC was introduced in 1990 in this same basic form factor. At the time, the smallest and thinnest Macintosh. And of course, these are interesting just for that reason, because of how small that they are. I believe it measures 3 inches at its tallest point. Probably even less than that. It looks more like 2 inches to me. It's almost like this case is only about 1 inch thick. Just looking at it unscientifically. I do have a tape measure. I could go get one. I've got an old school tape measure here. Now, I don't know how scientific this really is, just because of this thing at the end. Let's just assume that that's 1 inch, because it starts at 2. You can see there that indeed this stands about 3 inches from the ground there. As far as length, take a look here. Again, just a basic, potentially unscientific look at this. Looks like about, I don't know, what is that? 13 inches? Yeah, about 13 inches from front to back. And from side to side. This is the way that people used to have to do things, you know. A little bit more than 12 inches. Which doesn't sound right when you look at it, but this is a little bit more of a scientific look at it. But, yeah, about 3 inches tall. It's actually closer to 15 inches deep. And about 1 foot wide. The other thing that the LC is renowned for is for its cost cutting. What do I mean by that? Well, the whole purpose of the LC was to give Apple a Macintosh that they could sell to the educational market at the same price as an Apple IIgs. Basically, the death knell for the Apple IIgs is what they were looking for. So what they came up with is a machine, again, in the same basic form factor, that had significant amounts of cost cutting in the name of making it cheaper to manufacture, cheaper to produce, and therefore cheaper to sell. The initial price point for the LC was $2,500 US. So how did they do that? Well, beyond making it smaller, they also cost cut on the design of the machine by taking the old Motorola 68020 processor, the same processor that was used in the original Macintosh 2, which by that point had already been replaced with the Macintosh 2X and other models that had 68030s in them. So it took that same 16 megahertz 68020 processor, which is a 32-bit processor, I might add, and stuck it on a system board that had a 16-bit external bus. In addition to that, the LC was limited to 10 megabytes of memory maximum. My understanding is that that is not a bus limitation, that is just simply a limitation that Apple made simply to make it cheaper to manufacture, I would imagine. The other thing that the LC had was a processor direct slot, which was similar to the Macintosh SE. It did not have new bus, like the Macintosh 2 had, but that processor direct slot was hooked up in conjunction with a an Apple IIe compatibility card directed at educational markets still using Apple II software to provide for a stepping stone to go from the old Apple II stuff to the new Macintosh stuff. It also, to further lower the cost, sold with an optional second floppy drive that could be in there in place of a hard drive. Coming ahead a little bit, the LC2, introduced in 1992 to replace the LC, reversed a lot of the, shall we say, harebrained decisions that Apple made with the Macintosh LC. Got rid of the 68020 processor in favor of a 68030. I believe it was still clocked at 16 megahertz though. It still had the same 16-bit data bus and was still limited to 10 megabytes of memory as a direct result. However, the 68030 did offer virtual memory, the ability to use virtual memory, and the ability to run software like Kinetics RAM Doubler to give you more memory, so that was nice. The LC2 also shipped solely with a single floppy drive and a hard drive. It got rid of the second floppy connector, because nobody ever really bought them like that anyway. The other thing that it did is it doubled the amount of onboard memory, from 2 megabytes to 4 megabytes. Then we come to this LC3 from 1993, or at least introduced in 1993. It was discontinued in 1994. This machine upped the processor speed from 16 megahertz to 25 megahertz, but the biggest improvement on this design was a completely redesigned system board with a 32-bit data bus, finally. No more crippled memory limitations. Of course, being as though it is an LC, there are still some limitations. There is only one memory slot on this for taking RAM. But, unlike previous models which used 30-pin SIMs, this used a single 72-pin SIM and could take a maximum of 32 megabytes on a SIM, allowing you to run 36 megabytes of RAM on your Macintosh LC3. Of course, it still only had 4 megabytes of onboard RAM, with only the one SIM slot, 72-pin SIM, so much nicer than a 30-pin SIM, but still only one slot. It still only had support for the one floppy drive and the hard drive, and it still used the same LC PDS slot. I believe there was an extension on it to allow it to work with some newer cards, but if you put an older card in there, I believe if you put any card in there really, but certainly if you put an older one in there for compatibility reasons, it would make the machine slow down. You can see, of course, there's your audio in and out, not necessarily in that order. The LC was one of the first machines to have the audio input, I believe, along with the Macintosh 2 SI. Single ADB port, there's your SCSI port, 2 Apple serial ports, the rightmost which is GeoPort compatible, and there's the video with a power supply. I will note with intrigue, even though it does have that hard power switch right there, I think that this is a soft power only machine. I do know that it does support soft power, but I kind of wonder how something like that works. Most of the other systems had a power switch on the machine itself that you would use to power it on and not this switch. Enough about the history. What about this machine itself? Well, this was something that I picked up on eBay for cheap. surprisingly cheap. Probably because it was sold in untested condition, which is usually ominous. It's in really good shape. It's not terrifically yellowed or anything like that, like a lot of these are. And it looks like it's actually all intact, too. You know, you find a lot of these with broken plastic all over the place. I'm kind of amazed that this one survived shipping, but I've never opened it. So I don't know what condition its condition is in. Does not have an expansion card. You can see the block there. I think it would have had a screw here to hold this cover in place at one point. Let's go ahead and pop it open. Take a look at what we've got. Oh, good Jesus. Oh, it's a good thing I did. Well, that's probably broken now. So, right away I see problems. We're going to defuse this situation. Look at that. Undetonated depth charge. ER3. Out of all of the 3.6 volt lithium thionyl chloride batteries, these are the ones that explode the most and the worst. It's amazing that it didn't blow up. So there's one thing. Other than that, fan still runs. So the other thing that I would like to do, I don't know what condition the power supply is really in. It's a very small power supply. Rather interestingly, this is made by Aztec Custom Power. I thought the majority of these were made by TDK. It's obviously not standard or anything like that. I also can see that this machine looks like it is using all of its original capacitors. So it is going to need to be recapped at some point. If that some point isn't now. Having said that, it doesn't look like there is too much damage on this board. There is some from leakage. Looking at that, I don't really see anything there around U2. Looking here, I mean, you can tell that it has leaked because those are not shiny anymore. Those solder pads are not shiny anymore like they're supposed to be, but it doesn't look like it's really extended beyond that capacitor, C18 right there. These ones are actually still shiny. That's amazing. But yeah, U5 right there has got the most corrosion on it. Taking a look at that. I believe a lot of that's the audio section right there. And this capacitor, again, kind of amazing that it doesn't look like it's leaked too bad, although it definitely has. You can kind of see the orange bits around the label C20. So it will need to be recapped. People are probably going to jump on me now for plugging this in and powering it on anyway, because that's exactly what I'm going to do. But I believe that that's relatively harmless, as long as it's a short power on. Like, I wouldn't run this thing for hours and hours and hours. That'd be bad. It might not even run at all. But I'll have to get a capacitor list for this, and probably also the power supply. It would certainly be a good idea to recap the power supply at the same time. But I don't know when I would be able to get to that, because I am extraordinarily busy with other projects. The hard drive is here. It's an 80 megabyte drive, probably original. I have no idea if it actually works. These Pro drives from Quantum have got a rubber stopper that could have disintegrated. Of course, same thing with the floppy drive. I have no idea if that works. These are somewhat famous for having problems. But I suppose in the meantime, what I can do, and what I will do, since it looks like this thing is mostly intact, this doesn't need a ROM sim. That's what this is actually for, I believe. It could also be video memory expansion, and not a ROM sim. On previous models, it was a ROM sim. Right here is your 72-pin memory expansion. Or maybe that's this. I don't know. They're both 72-pin memory expansions. One of them is for video, one of them is for system memory. There, of course, is your PDS slot with the extension. But this is PDS, and then this is the extension, I believe the 32-bit extension for the processor direct slot. Alright. I'll put the cover on, and I'll get ready to power this thing on. See if it does anything. Okay. I'm a little nervous about this. But it's here. I have my adapter set for a 17-inch multi-sync video. I'm not sure that's actually going to work. Huh. Oh, there's problems. Yeah. The hard drive just spun down. There's squealing in the video, the audio. But I kind of expected that. I'm going to turn it off. I'm actually going to do... I'll turn it back on, and we'll take a listen to that hard drive. Oh, now it's trying to work. Yeah, so I think the power supply has got some problems. And so too does the audio, because of capacitors. Just made a noise. I don't know what that noise was. Well, it runs. There's a calendar. About this... Well, this is not really working, is it? LC3, 4 megabytes of RAM. How much information's on this hard drive? I don't want to run... This mouse is not working. And I'm wondering if that's got something to do with the ADB. How much information is on this hard drive? Looks like it's about half used. Yeah, I think that's all I'm going to do. If I can even get to the shutdown menu here. Come on. Shut down. Thank you. Oh, it doesn't support soft power at all. Well, maybe it does. Maybe you can soft power it from this. But no, actually no, you can't. Because in order to turn it off, you have to turn the switch off. I thought that this was new enough that it would support soft power. Well, maybe that's another place where they cut costs. So we've got some work to do. But amazingly, it doesn't actually function at all. Let me go ahead and power it on one more time. We'll see if we can hear what it said on startup, if it actually decides it wants to start up again. You can hear that very unhappy squealing coming from the speaker. No, hard drive spun down. This is not nice. You shouldn't do this. If this were a computer I cared a little bit more about, I wouldn't be trying this. See, there's an interference pattern in the video, too. See if we can hear what it says. Sounds like it's saying welcome to Macintosh. But anyway, let's see. Sound Master, I believe that was what was loading. It's definitely having some issues here. Yeah. So you can that's an additional control panel that allows you to set sounds for other things. That's exactly what it said. Oh, anyway, enough torturing this machine. So I'll need to get some capacitors. So I'll have to get a list of those. I'll have to recap it at some point. But, hey, that's a promising first test. Thanks for watching, and if you have any comments, feel free to leave them below.